Good morning, gang. Happy Sunday morning. So, I'll give you this. I've got a little advantage when it comes to world events, especially stuff going on in Europe, because I've got Mrs. P. And that's an asset that not many people have. Hell, not many of the news organizations have somebody that grew up in the Soviet Union to analyze some of this stuff for them. We were talking last night about what's going on in Europe and how it affects all of us. And so we got discussing into potentially whether there's going to be a World War III. And so she was telling me stories of what's coming out of Russia, stuff that obviously you're not going to hear in the US media, the Russian media, anything like that. I mean, this is from her following Vladimir Average. How about that? Okay. But, as opposed to Joe Average. So it gets kind of interesting to hear what she has to say. And apparently, the people in Russia are really turning on Putin, okay, badly. And not only the people, but the Chinese are turning on Putin. Now, we know there was a meeting between Putin and Xi Jinping a couple weeks back in Uzbekistan. And some of the stuff, of course, never comes out in the US press because, hey, it's got to be Putin bad, Putin bad, Putin bad, Xi Jinping good, Xi Jinping good. I hate to tell you, neither one of them are good, okay? As much as the lapdogs of the media and the Democrat politicians, and rhinos too, don't get me wrong, are perfectly happy to have their hand out and take that Chinese money and just pin everything on Russia. I mean, hell, it rains and they blame the Russians, okay? There is no love lost between China and Russia. And everybody who's saying, oh, China's aligning themselves with Russia and everything, Russia may think so. China, not so much, okay? From what she has done in her research, apparently when Putin was like, oh, our countries have been allies for such a long time, and, it's so great to be together, working together and everything, and Putin's fishing for help, okay? And Xi Jinping basically came back and said, well, yeah, culturally, economically, we're friends, we're allies. Not militarily. Which is a good thing, which scared the piss out of Putin, okay? Because, mind you, this is going back a couple of weeks now, so we're starting to be able to figure some of this stuff out, find some of this stuff out. Putin probably expected China to assist in everything he's got going on in Ukraine. It hasn't happened, okay? This all went down right before, and you can probably figure out the cause, right before Putin mobilized basically the entire nation, called up all the reservists and everything like that. Xi Jinping basically told him, we aren't coming to your rescue. And Putin was like, oh crap, I need every able-bodied man I have right now, right there. Believe it or not, China has aligned more with Ukraine than they have with Russia. Okay. Now, China would be perfectly happy to buy Russian gas and to sell Chinese crap to the Russians. Perfectly. China's in everything for the economic war, guys. That's what it is. Taiwan notwithstanding. Okay, that hasn't started yet, so we can't even begin to analyze what's going on there. But China's only concern with Russia-Ukraine is how it affects them economically. As much as everybody bitches about, oh, nationalism, and it's a threat to democracy, and, Trump and Maloney and Duda and everything. Funny how that's exactly what China does, too. They're concerned about themselves. I don't know, like most countries should be, not including this jackass in chief we have in Washington right now, who, if you're not a socialist, you're a threat to democracy. Figure that one out. Okay. So China's got to do something. They've got to put their foot down somewhere. And basically, they told Russia, sorry, ain't happening. We're worried about us economically, right? Well, the problem China has right now is they're in economic chaos, right? The yuan, the Chinese currency, is the weakest it's been since 1994. And you think about that, guys. That's almost 30 years ago. That's just after the Soviet Union fell. The biggest communist regime fell, and now the Chinese economy is there. I mean, again, communism doesn't work. Socialism doesn't work. And China's starting to live it right now. You could see China being in the situations that Russia was in, the Soviet Union was in, say in 1989, thereabouts, pre-fall, okay, pre-collapse. That's what's going on. So now China's coming in with their great plan of selling dollars on the open market and buying yuan to strengthen their currency and, in the meantime, weaken the dollar. I mean, it'll accelerate the drop of the dollar. So, this is what the concern is. China's not on Russia's side, which is a good thing for us to know, okay? That we don't potentially have a two-front war if this goes out. The bad side of things is this may cause Putin to just throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, screw it. He's got advisors telling him to use, how do you put it, low-impact nuclear weapons in Ukraine. That's going to be a problem, okay? You have countries that are very worried about that besides Ukraine. Poland and the Baltics, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, are worried about what Putin could possibly use too. But the people aren't on Putin's side. And this is where the problem lies. I mean, yes, we're seeing all the mobilizations and people getting on buses and, doing whatever they do. But how many people did you see flee Russia here in the last 10 days? Okay, get out any way they could because they don't want any part of this. They don't want to kill. I mean, you got to remember this. Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union, okay? There are a lot of Russian-speaking Ukrainians. There are a lot of Ukrainian-speaking Russians. I mean, and there's a lot of intermarriage between Ukrainians and Russians too. So people have family on both sides of the border. Yeah, you can go back to World War II and talk about brother versus brother. You certainly can go back to the Civil War in the United States and talk about brother versus brother. But you have that same scenario again. Do you want to be part of a team that is, for example, shelling the city where your cousins live or something like that, or your sister-in-law lives? This is part of the reason. People are not buying what Putin's selling. And Putin is now getting to be a cornered animal. As Mrs. P said, this could lead to the fall of Russia as a whole. Putin believes that he is Russia. Okay, and you think about that sentence for a second. Russia is Putin. Putin is Russia. Whatever happens to him happens to the country. That's truly what he believes. The problem is, just like every other politician, they've got no problem signing that declaration of war. They're just not going to pick up a rifle and go to the front, okay? We don't see, as much as Biden wants a war. Well, hell, Hunter's been kicked out of the military. You don't see Kamala Harris's kids, or even her stepkids, sign, at the local recruitment office going, where can I sign up to go to Ukraine? That's not going to happen. The politicians aren't going to send their kids. They're not going to go themselves, but they're more than willing to send yours. the thing is, Putin knows that he will get completely wiped out if he goes up against Ukraine. And that's his fear, too, why he didn't want Ukraine in NATO. Because then if NATO wipes out Russia is on the doorstep and decides, hey, we're going in, okay, Putin is Russia. So if NATO wipes out Russia, NATO wipes out Putin. Putin may wipe out himself. Putin may have something happen internally. I did the podcast with Tradcat Knight with Eric earlier this week or whatever, and he was asking, he said, what do you think is going to be what sets off worldwide conflict? Let's put it that way. And my guess is it's going to be something like World War I. It's going to be an assassination. If I had to pick the person in the world right now that is probably most apt to be assassinated, Vladimir Putin would be at the top of the list. Okay? Whether or not it is a government-sponsored one, or whether or not it is somebody internally to Russia. But I personally think Putin's backed into a corner, and one of two things is going to happen. Either he's going to somehow disappear from the face of the earth, or he's going to go hell-bent for leather. Let's hope it's the first, because we don't need World War III. Because a man who has nothing left to lose will do anything.